Hello and welcome to week 10 of the virtualracingschool.com tutorial videos series. We're here at Mosport with the Audi R8 GT3 car once again. Mosport is a very historic circuit, over 50 years old in fact, with massive undulations and several high-speed blind corners, and it's a real challenge for the driver because you have to be sort of fully committed and on the edge, on the verge of putting a wheel off most of the time to really get the most out of the lap. Yeah, it's certainly something that I struggle with around here. So yeah, what we're going to do is watch back my 1 minute 16.126 in default weather, and then we will spend a bit of time as usual dissecting it and analysing what I've done and why I've done it. So without further hesitation, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, I was wondering when it was going to stop then. Right, so yeah, those last sequence of corners are really tricky because you really have to be so patient, and obviously it's the end of the lap, so if you're on a good lap it can be really tough to sort of keep your composure there. Right, so let's rewind back to exiting the final corner. You want to get a good exit out of here, like most laps. So straighten the car up nicely on the curb here. Full throttle as you turn in. Just a slight bit of braking. And then hard back on the power to power through and then out. So yeah, I did say this, I might have said this earlier, there's no real braking references at Mosport, so it's very much a look to the apex and sort of feel. Over time, as you do more and more laps to practice, you will sort of pick up subconsciously on cues, various cues, visual cues, to sort of help you decide without really thinking about it too much when to brake, and then going into the corner the next time round you can be like, oh, I need to brake it slightly earlier or slightly later depending on how sort of deep into the corner you ended up. So yeah, as I'm approaching, as I said, I'm full throttle as I turn in, and then only as I've started bringing the car towards the middle of the circuit from that outer edge, do I start to apply the brakes. But it's very little braking, because you want to carry lots of speed into the apex. So there's a very initial sort of application of about 20% braking, and then I sort of roll off to trail brake, which is what I'm doing from here on in. Just a very brief coast right at the end because I was very happy with where the car was sitting, and I was just waiting for the optimum moment to commit to full power. And it is nice basically to commit to full power straight away rather than to gradually bring it in, because if you gradually bring in the throttle, you'll start to very briefly introduce understeer before you get to full power. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm about 2/3 the way along this curve on the right, and then I'm pretty much straight to full power, not super aggressively, but without hesitation. And fortunately, that was well timed. And this circuit is very much about timing your pedal inputs, keeping your sort of steering inputs pretty simple, trying to turn in just once, and then timing your throttle application so that you don't run out of track, basically, or you use all of the track that's available. So yeah, if you're too late on the throttle, then you won't essentially fully utilize the full width of the track if you want to keep it nice and tight, which you do. So I've done that quite nicely there. And then heading into turn 2, I believe it's called Clayton Corner, you want to start braking just as you crest, basically. So just as you come over the crest, you want to get on the brakes about, again, not much, 30%. And notice again, I was turning in on full power, but as I crest, I get on the brakes. Well, actually, about initial application there is about 50%, but I immediately start to bleed it off, trying to keep the steering input quite constant. That there is a good clipping point. So you want to just brush this white line on the inside. You don't want to cut it too much because the track level dips. There's like a groove just inside that white line, which you don't really want to hook up to. And then, yeah, just a little bit of trail braking again from me there, and then waiting whilst trail braking for the sort of optimal moment to get back onto full power. Now, I did actually get back on full power just a little bit too soon there. Well, there was also a little bit of maintenance throttle there, so just there. So that was just after my blip. That's probably a confidence thing because I don't want the car to turn in too aggressively when I downshift, so I'm just holding a little bit of trailing throttle just to sort of control the turn in, because it's really about keeping the car settled through these high speed corners, carrying the speed but keeping the balance of the car settled. And setup is also quite critical at this circuit. I've increased the tyre pressures by 2 clicks, which is the first time that I've done that for the data pack setups that I've been uploading. The reason I haven't done that previously is because I've made a decision to keep the setups as close as I can to the iRacing supplied baseline setup, so that it's more about the driving. So, but at Mosport, the balance of the car is quite critical. So, and also because of the high speed corners, there's a little bit of time to be gained by running slightly higher pressures with that higher load, essentially. So yeah, basically you're relying on a good neutral balance, which will allow you to be quite minimal with your steering inputs and just roll through these high speed corners with maximum speed, which is what I've tried to do. So here I'm on to full power, but I have a slight hesitation, just because I feel that was a little bit too early. But then I've fully committed, and I'm just slightly opening the steering. That was nice. That was quite tight. I probably could have actually made the corner without that hesitation, and I would have ended up just flirting with this curb. So it would have been risky, and but it wouldn't have gained me too much time. So, but as ever, there is time to be found, in from anyone. So yeah. So into turn 3 now, Quebec corner. So yeah, again, no real braking reference. Just a matter of experience from previous laps, and you sort of get used to, from muscle memory, getting used to when to brake. And again, only about 50% initial braking here, so but not turning in under full power this time. Only once I start to brake do I begin to turn in. So line is very important here, as it is with all these corners. So you want to just kind of be really patient. So my initial braking is out of the way already at this point here, before I've even arrived at this inside curb, but I'm rolling the car, but trail braking ever so slightly, just to maximise that front turn in. So I've not braked the car down too much, so I'm still carrying speed at this point, but in order to not drift wide and miss the apex, I'm trail braking, which is something you have to do to be quick in GT3 cars. So that's what I'm doing, hooking up with the apex nicely here, really close to this curb, but not actually touching it. Generally you want to avoid most of the curbs here at Mosport, so because they're quite tall, and with the high speed corners, you don't want to be upsetting the balance of the car, which they most certainly will do. So I'm in third gear at this point, which is quite torquey, so I'm only at 80% throttle, maybe even 70% throttle for a good while before I'm confident enough to get back to full power. And you do have to be quite sort of hesitant through here, because if you are too aggressive, you'll either run out of track or you'll induce oversteer, and you'll have to get out of the power a lot to keep hold of it. So yeah, you want to be, you've got to treat it almost similar to club corner at Silverstone, just waiting patiently. So yeah, back to full power now. That was nice. That carried me all the way over to this exit curve here. So sweeping over to the right of the track, just before the bridge. Now, positioning of the car as you turn in at full throttle into this fast sweeping downhill turn 4 is extremely important, because you want to carry as much speed and as much throttle into the braking zone of Moss corner at the bottom. So yeah, line is very important here. So I'm pretty much at the middle of the track as I go under the bridge there, but aiming for this white line on the inside, and my line on this lap was pretty good. Just a little bit wide actually, so at some point I'm going to have to come out the throttle. There we are, but back on the throttle. So it's better to come out of the throttle rather than trying to stay in it and compromising your entry into Moss. You don't want to have too tight a line into Moss. So it's a compromise between absolute speed down through here and your entry position into Moss. So yeah, a slight lift just as you begin to head downhill, but then ideally you want to be able to keeping on full power, which I wasn't able to do. Slight lift again just to keep it tight, as mentioned, which I've done, so that's nice. And then pretty much as the corner finishes and you're at the bottom of the hill, you immediately get hard onto the brakes. Now you can be quite aggressive on the brakes here because of all the compression, which obviously I've done, so I'm about 60%, maybe even 70% there, so you want to shave off all that speed. Still on the brakes quite a lot as I'm turning in, and then only when I reach the first uphill apex do I reduce all the way down to the bare minimal trail braking, which I will pretty much carry all the way through Moss, because the car obviously goes light again over this crest, and it's a matter of really slowing the car right down and being quite patient, which I'm doing. So I'm kind of rolling through it, trail braking ever so slightly just to keep the car positioned where I want it to be, and then you need to be very deliberate with your throttle application on the exit out of here, because exit is critical because you've got this massively long uphill straight, which if you get a bad exit out of here, you're going to lose time all the way up there. So yeah, just playing with the throttle rather than opening the steering, because I've actually turned it a little bit too early there for this second apex. I'm just playing with the throttle ever so slightly just to push the front end slightly wide, and that way I'm still utilizing the maximum tire grip. If I open the steering, then I'm not fully exploiting the traction circle, basically. So really you want to kind of keep the steering input consistent, nice and tight, and play with the pedals to either pull or push the car into or away from the apex that you want to hit. So that's what I've done. Just push it slightly wide and then picking up the throttle hard just as I pass that inside apex. Hard onto the throttle. And then another thing to notice there is, as I'm hard onto the throttle, I'm opening the steering up at the same time, because you don't want to get any oversteer on the exit again. Again, it's about having a super settled exit, which I've done so there. So you can keep it tight on the exit to this inside, and that just brush over that curb, and then just watch your RPMs along this straight. About 7.7, 7.6 you want to change, keeping it tight on the right and then sweeping gradually over to the left as you approach the high-speed S's, and you can enter the first of them with a lot of speed. So I'm already turning in at this point now, and then only now am I off the power and on the brakes. But again, not on the brakes very much, about 40%, but a very short application, and then pretty much off the brakes straight away, and some maintenance throttle because the corner kind of opens up again before you get to a second apex. So a little bit of throttle there just to bring the car back out again slightly, but still aiming with the wheel to keep it tight, and then bringing it back tight for the second apex. And then from here on out, it's very, very important to keep the car very tight. If you miss any of these apexes, it's going to massively compromise the following corner. So line is absolutely critical here. So yeah, I'm actually a tiny bit wide here, but not too bad. My initial apex was good, so right here that's bang on, and then just a tiny bit wider than I'd like at this point, but it's okay. Back to full power on the brakes again, for another short application. Not quite so short actually, because you do want to slow the car down a bit more this time for this apex. And yeah, again, keeping it super tight, because you want a nice wide entry into this final corner. So yeah, very briefly at full throttle there before the win or lose corner of the lap, which so it's a horrible corner to finish off, because the car really likes to be unsettled as you apex. So I do tend to sort of apply a little bit of maintenance throttle just there. So I've turned in a tiny bit early, and just a little bit of maintenance throttle just to bring it out so that I don't run over that inside curb, because that will cause an unsettling of the balance of the car, and you will have to hesitate a lot to sort of gather it back up, which you don't want to do. You want to flow through here, keeping up your momentum basically. So that's what I've done, and then a very measured, relatively speaking, a very measured application on the throttle on the exit for this one, just because you're kind of, I think it's a little bit off camber actually, and yeah, you just have to be so careful. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm quite hesitant on the throttle, quite gradual, only about 60%, and then only when I'm here do I straighten the wheel, let the car run out onto this curb, not too much curb, and full power across the line. So there we go, quite a short lap, but a very difficult one, where precision and accuracy are extremely important. So yeah, as usual, you can find my setup, replay and telemetry on virtualracingschool.com in my data pack, where you can also find data packs for the other GT3 cars from other Coanda drivers and various other cars as well. So do check it out. Again, watch the hot lap now that you've seen the analysis, and yeah, I will see you next week. I hope it's been useful once again. Thanks for watching.